Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel where we keep everything real. We talk all things property investing in the UK. So today's workshop, we are going to talk about what you can do if your tenant falls into arrears and what are the processes that you need to go through to try and get your rent paid on time. Now, I can only tell you the things that we do in our business and give you the best practice. So here's what we do. First of all, we take our rents on the first of the month. Now, we do this for a reason, because we only want to reconcile our bank accounts once. And if we do have any tenants that don't pay, we only really want to be chasing them for the one day out of the month. Otherwise, we'd find that we are completely taken up with chasing tenants every single day. So we always stipulate to our tenants that they must pay on the first of the month. Now, what if the tenant gets paid on the 15th or the 25th or the 30th? Well, I'm afraid that they do have to budget their money themselves. So if they do get paid in the middle of the month, they are going to have to keep it to one side in order to make sure you get paid on the first. Now, if they move in halfway through the month, then we will pro rata the payment for the rest of that month. So for example, if they move in on the 15th, then we will take 15 days worth of payments from them, and then their rent will be due on the 1st. If they move in on the 20th, then we'll take the 10 or 11 days. But if they move in after the 20th, so for example, the 25th, then we'll take the 5 or 6 days that's remaining for that month and the whole of the following month as well. So we know at least we are going to get at least 1 month's payment from that tenant. Now, what happens on the first of the month? We take our rental payments on standing order. And we don't do direct debit now because direct debit is really expensive and we've got about 150 something tenants. Now, if we have to get charged per tenant for every single rental payment, now that's going to cost us probably the profit for one whole HMO. So we take standing orders because they're free. And the other thing is with direct debits, the only benefit that I can see personally is that you get told if you're not going to get paid. Well, so what? I know I'm not going to get paid. I'm not going to get paid. I don't need to pay maybe £500 a month for that privilege. So we take standing orders, and standing orders are free. And what we do is we set the standing order up on behalf of our tenant. So when the tenants move in, we give them a standing order mandate. We send that to the bank on their behalf. So then we know it's done properly. So what will happen then? On the first of the month, most of the rent should come in overnight. And by 9 a.m, 80% of the rent should be in the bank account. So I'll come to the office and I use a system called Tenant. And Tenant's a system that we've created, and we can check the rents against the tenants and it will tell us who's paid and who hasn't. So it will separate the two. So the people that have paid, great, we don't need to bother them at all. We'll be looking at the people that haven't paid. So the money's not gone in overnight with the rest of them. So by around 9:30 a.m. on the first of the month, we will send a text message to the tenants that haven't paid yet. And that will be just a simple, hello, Mr. Tenant, you haven't paid, your rent hasn't arrived along with the others overnight. Can you please look into this? Now, most of those tenants then will reply and say, oh, sorry, I've messed up, or the bank's messed up, or don't know what's happened. I'll make sure you have it within the hour. And that's great. So those tenants then we can forget about because we know that pretty much they're going to pay. Now, it's the tenants that don't respond to that message that we start to become a little bit concerned about. So what we will do then is we will wait until around lunchtime, and then at lunchtime we will send the tenants that still haven't paid another text message. And this one will be, please call the office. We still haven't received your rent. Now, those that do call the office and those that pay, we then move those to one side. We don't need to worry about those. We're still concentrating on the tenants that haven't had any correspondence with us at all. So these are the tenants now that are starting to raise a little bit of a red flag. So what happens from this point is that we will then, by around 2 o'clock, if we still haven't heard from them, we'll call them. and we'll give them a phone call and try and talk to them. Now, if we do get to talk to them, we're going to establish why they haven't paid. And if they are suffering financially, then we can agree to some form of payment plan. That's fine. But the biggest thing is opening up that channel of communication, because as soon as that breaks down, it's very hard to get anything from the tenant moving forwards. So the tenants that don't answer the call and potentially don't reply to the message that we leave are again raising another red flag. So now we're starting to become a little bit concerned. So what we're going to do is phone them again at 5 p.m. and say, look, we haven't heard from you. We have tried to contact you. You haven't paid us. You are now in arrears. Please make sure that you sort this out overnight. Otherwise, we are going to have to contact your guarantor, presuming they've got a guarantor. And then we'll leave it. And then we'll come back into work the next day and we'll check the bank accounts. And if they haven't paid at this point, we are now starting to see a little bit of an issue. So what we're going to do now at this point is call their guarantor if they've got one and try and sort it with their guarantor. If they don't have a guarantor, then what we're going to do now is send them a letter, either recorded delivery, or we can deliver it by hand and take it to the property ourselves. And that letter is an arrears letter. And it will say, dear tenant, we have tried to contact you on several occasions. You haven't replied to any of our messages. You are now in arrears. We will be conducting a room inspection within 24 hours. So the next element then is to go to the property and to go and check the room, because we need to see whether the tenant is still in occupation or whether they have decided to move out without telling us. So there's a couple of things here now that you really, really need to be very aware of. So when you get to the property, if the tenant appears to have left, and by that I mean they haven't left you a letter to say that they're surrendering their tenancy. There are a few items of clothing around. They haven't left their key, so you're not sure. It looks like they've gone, but you're not entirely sure whether they have gone or not. I'm going to say this to you folks, is please don't be tempted to take the law into your own hands by saying, well, they've obviously gone. I'm going to re-let the room to somebody else. I'm going to throw their belongings away. Now, I know that when tenants don't pay you, you become very engulfed in it and you become emotionally involved with it. But I'm going to say to you, please don't be that person, because if you do that, effectively, you are unlawfully evicting the tenant, even if they've gone and if they've gone off their own accord. But sometimes, not always, but sometimes the tenant actually hasn't left, and they may have been admitted to hospital. They may have potentially gone on holiday. They may have been arrested, and maybe they've been to prison. Now, I say all of this because these are all real life scenarios. And I can tell you that in my Facebook group, which is the HMO and property community group, we've got over 16,000 active landlords in that group. And about 2 weeks ago, we had this conversation. Somebody said, I'm just going to kick them out. Somebody came in and said, don't do that. I did that once. I got fined £10,000 for unlawful eviction because the tenant came back. He had been in prison and he wanted to know where all of his possessions were and why he couldn't get back into his room. Okay, so what is the real way that you should deal with this? Okay, so the only correct way would be by seeking a possession order in the court. So if the property is empty and if they haven't paid, you can serve them a Section 8 notice. Now, a Section 8 notice allows you to give them 2 weeks for non-payment as long as they are 8 weeks in arrears. Now, if they pay monthly and if they pay on the first of the month in advance, then on the first of the second month, if they don't pay you, effectively, they are now in 8 weeks arrears. So you can serve a Section 8 eviction notice to the last known address, which is the room. They're not going to get it if they're not there, but that's okay. Now, after the 2-week period has expired, you can then go to court and seek a possession order. Now, you can go for an accelerated possession order, and the chances are the tenant won't turn up anyway, so which means you should get possession, and that will mean maybe 2 months. It could go on a little bit longer, depending on how busy your court is at the time. But it means that you then can go and re-let the room lawfully, and you can sleep well at night, and you don't have to worry about committing any offences. So that's if the tenant looks like they've gone. If the tenant looks like they're still there and all of their possessions are still in the property and it's quite obvious they're still there, if they're not contacting you and if you're sending messages and they are failing to reply to anything, then it would unfortunately have to be the same route. So I'd still go down the Section 8 possession route for non-payment and late payments. So you'd serve 2 grounds under Section 8 in order to get the room back. You've tried everything that you can do. You've sent them letters and they haven't responded. The only thing you can do then is go for a possession order. But how do you get your money? They haven't paid you and you've still got maybe a month or even 2 months or longer outstanding in rent. Now, I've got 2 ways of thinking of this. Now, years ago, I used to pursue every single tenant for every penny. And very quickly, I understood that actually I wasn't getting any of that money back. All it was doing, it was taking up my time, it was taking up my energy, and I was focusing on that rather than building my business. So out of all of the money claim online applications that we did for non-paying tenants, I only ever got paid once from one person. All of the others, even we went to court, we went for warrant officers, and then we went for the bailiffs to go out and try and seize goods to the value of, but they always came back empty-handed because these kids don't have any money, they've got no possessions, so therefore we couldn't really pursue them for anything. So all of that was in vain. At the end of it, they were awarded a county court judgment, which meant that their credit history would probably be screwed moving forwards, but it doesn't give us any benefit whatsoever. So I would say to you is, for the sake of a month's rent, maybe £300-400, focus all your time and energy on refilling the room and reletting the room, doing things the right way, growing and developing your business rather than trying to pursue someone for a few £100s that you're probably never ever going to get. That's my best advice. So that's what we do, folks. That's how we deal with our arrears and non-payers. So the first element, if the money doesn't land when it should do, send a text message. Then about lunchtime, send a second text message. If you still haven't heard anything, you phone them around 5 p.m. And then the next day, if the money's not in the bank and you still haven't heard anything and you're not able to establish a line of communication, then you'd send them a letter. Then you conduct a viewing, an inspection on their room 24 hours after giving notice. Then you can make the decision on what to do to move forwards. So if the room is empty and it looks like they've left, go for a possession order after serving Section 8. And the same, if they are still in occupation, try and make contact again, send them a letter, contact the guarantor, and if it's still to no avail, it's still Section 8 eviction. That's what we do. Fortunately, because we reference our tenants really well at the beginning, it hardly ever happens. So we are really, really fortunate. But if you are proactive in chasing your rents, you've only got a small window of opportunity before the tenant spends it. So if it doesn't come into your bank account, you must make them aware, because if they think they've got more money this month, they will spend it and then you will get paid last if you get paid at all. So I hope that was useful, folks. Like always, we share all of our top tips from the coalface. We don't give you any BS. So if you like our workshops, please do subscribe by clicking the subscribe button and make sure that you're here on the next one. Take care, folks. See you soon.